So, positive eugenics is breeding for a desired trait, whatever that trait may be. In animals, for example, let's take cattle. You've heard of Angus beef, right? That's bred for muscle tissue, good quality, lots of meat. Dairy cattle like a Holstein, they're bred specifically and solely for milk production. High quality milk and lots of it. You don't want to cross an Angus and a Holstein because they're each bred for different things. That is an example of positive eugenics. You breed true for a specific desired trait. Whatever the trait may be, it's generally one that is considered desirable. Notice I'm not saying advantageous to the organism. I'm saying it's advantageous to humans. Because ultimately, when you get down to it, positive eugenics is nothing but artificial selection. The reverse of this would be negative eugenics. Negative eugenics. Negative eugenics is where you attempt to breed out an undesired trait. And there's two ways you can do this. Number one is to simply not allow the creatures to breed. Again, there's a variety of ways you can do that: sterilization, isolation. Unfortunately, there's another way to do it that seems to be favored, and that is culling the herd. You kill them. You not only don't let them breed, you don't let them live.
So, you're going to be asking this on the test, I assume, and give an example? Probably. I have a cow that is going through this right now. We are breeding out the Holstein and her. She was bred with a Holstein and a Guernsey. Could I use that as an example?
Absolutely, because that is, you all are the ones controlling the breeding, and that's something you've said is not a desired trait, so you're breeding it out. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And you said before, like, if say the milk in a Angus beef and they cross by bred, would that be another undesirable by negative trait?
Not necessarily. It depends on what you're breeding it for. If you're a dairy farmer, you wouldn't want that cow in your herd. If you're a meat farmer, you wouldn't want the offspring in your herd. If you are a scientist who is trying to conserve cow genomics, you probably would want the hybrid.
Okay.
And it's a very, very good question. I hope y'all realize it sounds arbitrary. It is, like so much of what we've been saying. We pick what we desire. You look at the different types of corn. Does anybody in here like sweet corn? Anybody here like popcorn? You wouldn't want to cross those two, would you? You try to roast some hybrid, half of them pop, and the other half get burnt, and you end up with a mess. Y'all ever heard of flint corn? It's hard corn. It's used to make cornmeal. It's a cattle feed that's very valuable. Corn oil, I'm sure you've seen that. All of those are desirable if those are the traits you're wanting to cultivate. If you're a popcorn farmer, you're not going to plant it next to a field of sweet corn. It's all arbitrary. Make sure you understand that. No higher authority is sitting here saying this is right and that is wrong. You're the higher authority. Whatever you pick.
Okay. For an example for the positive one, we breed our our dairy with beef on purpose so that they have smaller and easier births. Is that positive?
Absolutely. Because you have chosen that particular trait to enhance the health of your herd. So absolutely. You get somebody who's a large-scale dairy farmer, maybe they don't care about survivorship, they only care about maximum milk production. So they might breed the opposite. Doesn't mean they're right and you're wrong, it just means you each have a different focus. It's a very good example. Thank you for sharing. As you see, this stuff actually has some applicability in your own lives, doesn't it?
It could happen to humans as well in a way. Could it?
You would go there. I knew somebody would do it. You can have it happen in humans as well. Oh dear. Yes, in the early 1900s, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of argument, a lot of pseudoscience about how certain populations were genetically superior to others, and therefore so-and-so should breed and so-and-so shouldn't. Human eugenics. This is probably worth a separate heading. Almost all human eugenics has been negative. It was practiced in just about every country, including this one. The mildest form of it was mainly forced sterilization. Typically people who were institutionalized, which in the old days they said everybody was insane that didn't act normal. So that was a variety of syndromes. Certain people who suffered from disabilities. Since they were in the institution, they didn't really have a choice. They were let to live out their life, but there was no way they could ever breed successfully and pass on. By the 1930s, in Central Europe, there was another group that took this to its logical extreme conclusion. This was the Nationalist Socialist Democratic Party of Germany. You may be more familiar with the shortened form of Nazi. The Nazis started with sterilization programs. As they consolidated power, as they became more comfortable with their goals and more ruthless, they upgraded to the Action T4 program, where they basically went into the hospitals, the institutions, and the asylums, and rather than sterilize all of these unfortunate individuals, they just eliminated them entirely. Mass murder on an industrial scale.
That was not just the Jewish people, it was disabled people.
That was only, Action T4 was only the disabled and the insane. In 1942, in the Berlin suburb of Wannsee, number 2 guy in the SS, Reinhard Heydrich, convened a conference, now known as the Wannsee Conference, where he got together a variety of individuals from different departments of the Nazi government, and they discussed the final solution to the Jewish problem. The results were not concentration camps, but rather extermination camps. since the Germans were a very organized culture and they had very detailed records of births, deaths, and so forth, they essentially went through all of their territory and they had decided that Jewish ancestry was genetically undesirable and they were going to eliminate it from the gene pool. And I don't remember what it was, half Jewish, quarter Jewish, something like that. If you were sent on a train to one of the camps. When you got off the train, they would march you, and there was a Nazi individual there in a uniform, and this individual would basically point to the left or to the right, depending on his visual judgment of your ability to work. Women, children, the old, the infirm, the sick were generally sent this way. Able-bodied men were sent this way. If you're sent this way, they tell you that they're going to get you into new clothes and a new barracks just as soon as possible. But first, they've got to get you out of your old clothes. They've got to run you through the showers to make sure that you don't have lice and all that. And then you'll be in your new home. And what they do is they get you to strip. They force you into a large open area that has shower heads. They close the door. They seal it. They drop in pellets of a chemical called Zyklon B, which was developed as a pesticide. It was intended to kill rats. Basically, it's hydrogen cyanide. These were the gas chambers. And they would leave the people in there for 15 or 20 minutes, and then they would open them up and send in another group of prisoners called the Sonderkommando, whose job it was to haul all of the dead bodies out of the gas chamber, load them onto little trolleys, and take them to crematoria to be burned. Could kill up to about 2,000 a day, I think, at the peak of it. Y'all have heard the term Auschwitz, I'm sure. Birkenau, Dachau, Ravensbrück. And it wasn't just the Jews. Homosexuals, people that were gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, they had different classifications. If you weren't sent immediately to the gas chambers, basically they would put you on a starvation quality diet, work you to death, and eventually you would die. Well, that's got everybody nice and quiet. You mentioned human eugenics, we got to talk about it. Obviously, that is one of the darkest chapters in human history, and the Nazis, most of them paid the ultimate price. Yes, ma'am?
Weren't they like testing on people? Like,
they claimed they were, but the data that was generated was garbage. One thing, for example, I don't remember the specifics because I wasn't planning on getting too deep into this. They wanted to know how long their bomber pilots could survive if they were shot down over the North Sea and had to bail out in the icy cold water. So what they did was they took some of these emaciated, starving prisoners, stripped them and essentially threw them into tubs of ice water and timed it to see how long they took to die. There was actually some argument about whether or not that data should even be used in research. Further review of it revealed that it wasn't controlled, it wasn't a real experiment, it was essentially just cruelty. They would infect, they'd take twins. Joseph Mengele, the head doctor at Auschwitz, loved twins.
Oh, I heard that.
Yeah, he would take them and he'd expose one twin to some kind of illness or surgery and not the other twin, and just all kinds of things. He was a really, really sick individual. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat any of this. Like when I say it's one of the darkest periods in human history, I mean period. But it was done in the name of eugenics. Now I've horrified everybody. Any other questions about that? I'm not trying to get hung up on this. I just want you to understand history, science, life, it all overlaps. You may think this isn't relevant to you, A few things we talked about may not be immediately relevant, but at some point it does come back to touch lives in real life. Yes, ma'am.
Why the Jews? Why did he keep blonde hair, blue eye? Like, get rid of that.
They would just hate him, really.
I am not privy to Adolf Hitler's inner thoughts. Part of it, from what I understand, he had some negative interactions when he was trying to go to art school in Vienna right before World War I. Part of it was a political justification. If I am suppressing you, you're going to resent me, aren't you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare them across the hall as our enemies, and I'm going to focus your anger and aggression towards them, right? Who lost World War I? Germany. So rather than blame their own men for losing the war, they formulated what was called the stab in the back theory, that the Jews stabbed them in the back, and that's why they lost the war. And these are just a couple of the pieces of Nazi propaganda that was brought forth.
I believe you wrote a book about it.
If you've got something to say, feel free to say it.
In Mein Kampf, wasn't it? He wrote
Yeah.
genocidal tendencies.
He wrote a book called Mein Kampf, which is My Struggle. Hitler tried to take power in the early 1900s. You ever heard of the beer hall putsch? He got together a bunch of his supporters. They all got together at a beer hall and decided they were going to take over a city. I think it was Munich. I may be wrong on that. Munich, thanks. And they got shut down. He got imprisoned for 6 months or a year, something like that. And he dictated his book to his cellmate, and his cellmate wrote it down. And he published it. And today it's illegal in Germany.
It was published way before he took power, though. It wasn't like
Yeah, but it was in the 1920s when he published it, like 24, 25. Again, I didn't look up the exact dates. I didn't think we'd be discussing Adolf Hitler's mindset in class, but there you go. I told y'all you could ask any question.
there is a bit of a decline in teaching that since
Well,
about 10 years ago.
it's not something that's comfortable to talk about. I mean, several of you are looking at me kind of shell-shocked. One or two of you are looking at me kind of angrily, like I'm the one responsible for it. I assure you, I do not hold those thoughts. I'm pretty easygoing unless you pull out in front of me and make me break my cruise control while I'm on my drive home. Then, yeah, I'll become the beast incarnate. But other than that, I'm generally easygoing. The point I want you to understand is all of this is a human construction. There is no such thing as race. It's all a human construction. If you consider the African American community, and by that I mean people who are of African descent but have been here in the U.S., and their ancestors have been here for roughly 200 years. Does anybody know what percentage of their DNA is typically European? Anywhere from a fifth to a third, depending on the individual. And in African American males, if you look at just their Y chromosomal lineage, about 1 in 3 is European in origin. For those of you wondering what that means, it means that white masters raped their slaves, to sugarcoat it.
Isn't it just a melanin gene that's turned on and off?
Skin color is dependent upon a lot of things. It's a polygenic trait, Polygenic, many genes. It's additive. And there's two types of Melanin, the ratio, is what determines things like hair color, skin color, eye color. Eumelanin and pheomelanin. If you've got more pheomelanin, you're more likely to be a ginger or a redhead. Also, there is an environmental component. Y'all ever heard of tanning beds? People willingly expose their skin to shortwave ultraviolet radiation for the purpose of damaging it so that it will get darker by increasing the melanin production.
In which it would be worse for them in the future because it was making.
Oh yeah. I know some ladies that I went to school with who would tan twice a week, and today their skin looks like boot leather. Don't look at me. As fair-skinned as I am, I go out on a cloudy day and I burn. You know, I keep the lights on dim. I worry about those 100-watt bulbs. I'm a quarter Norwegian, joking aside. I burn very easily.
I know, what is it?
I don't know. You tell
I
me.
was going to say, like, if you had, like, whiter skin and such, you could burn way more.
Mm-hmm. But my point I was telling you, that's an environmental component.
Yeah, I kind of realize it's both, but it isn't, I feel like there's this idea that there's some different genes for dark and black people. I don't think it's different, it's just, like you said, it's additive.
Remember what we talked about populations? Like Ireland, joking aside, is known primarily for redheads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about the MCR1 allele and just how it's a higher frequency there. We're fortunate, and that's a single allele. But things like what we consider racial characteristics are just local population variants. That's all. For most of history, humans were relatively isolated. Make sure you get that down. For most of recorded history, human populations were fairly isolated. I've mentioned the Fugates, haven't I? The blue people of Kentucky. And I'm not talking incest or siblings or something like that. I'm just saying that up until a century ago, going from here to Oneida would have been a real chore. Even a century ago, it would have been a multi-hour journey, not just in a single hour down the highway for me. It may have even taken 2 or 3 days. Most people don't realize the main railroad through here didn't come in until, I think it was the 1880s. Up until a couple of years ago, it was actually owned by the city of Cincinnati. Did y'all know that? They wanted a way to get their goods to the South relatively cheaply. Ambrose Burnside had marched his troops through here during the Civil War and said it could really use a good railroad. People in Cincinnati kept trying to get various entities of government to make the railroad. They wouldn't, so they decided to do it themselves. And literally until, I think, 2022, they actually owned the main railroad from here to Chattanooga.
It's crazy how we evolved from like 1800s to 2000 now. We have so much now than we did before.
It's one of the more interesting things as you get older, you realize your perspective changes. I tease you all, you tease me back, but at the end of the day, you all think differently than I do simply because you were raised under different circumstances. I'd be willing to bet most of you could not envision being in college without the internet, can you? I literally did not get my first email address until I was working on my master's degree at the University of Tennessee. My entire undergrad experience, there was no internet access at all for anybody. I think there were 2 people on the entire dorm floor that I lived on that had personal computers. It's just the way it was. It gives me a very different perspective than you. Not good, not bad, not better, not worse, just different. I will freely admit I do not like AI. partly because people use it wrongly. People have become very, very lazy about it, but also the thing gets things wrong. About half the time I use it within my field, I know it's a wrong answer. Which is why tomorrow is my favorite day of the year. Does anybody know why?
April Fool's Day.
It's April Fool's Day, the one day of the year when people actually bother to check sources and critically think about what's been said on the internet. One day a year we get you thinking. But I'll freely admit, I also sound like that grumpy old man, get off my lawn! And to a certain degree I am. That's why I hope that you guys realize I try to respect your learning style. And I hope you get a little respect mine in the way I teach, because I want it to be something that helps you, not hinders you.
I think it also hinders people's ability to adopt new information because you don't trust it. You're just always.
I agree. I am at the point now where I'm so cynical I don't really trust anything I read on the internet.
Like sometimes I feel like just going to the old encyclopedias that I stored in my storage and taking that out.
Well, it's like anything. You can take it to one extreme or the other.
Yeah.
My best friend's dad had a good quote I like. Practice moderation in all things, including moderation. Meaning there's a time or two to cut loose. And of course, as we always seem to do in this class, we have gotten off here in the weeds on a rabbit path. Interesting, but not really relevant. So what was the last thing we were talking about? Eugenics, yes?
Yeah.
So since we've already brought up race, I'll just mention it. Race is a social construct. It's arbitrary, it's capricious, it has no basis in biology. There's one race, and that's the human race, period. You may have localized variation, but to base it on skin color is as stupid as basing it on eye color or hair color or any other thing you care to base it on. It's arbitrary, it's capricious. Kind of goes back to tribalism, and by that I mean you've got the in-group and the out-group. If you're in the in-group, you're pals with your people, right? The out-group is everybody else. And othering someone is a convenient way to keep them in the out-group. So, human eugenics today. Three possible threads on this. Number one is gene therapy. Gene therapy. Let's define it. Gene therapy is replacing a defective allele with a functional allele. Replacing a defective allele with a functional allele. As an idea, it's actually a pretty good one. Does anybody in here know what cystic fibrosis is? CF is a respiratory disease that's caused by a single mutation. 3 nucleotides are deleted in one gene, and the epithelial cells that line the airways have a fluid imbalance. They can't move fluid in and out of the cells the way they should. It essentially means they produce a very, very thick and heavy mucus. Eventually, they get so much of it into their lungs that they essentially drown. When I was about your age, the average life of a CF patient was about your age. Last time I checked, about 10 years ago, they got up into the 40s. But generally, if you've got CF, it's still a shortened lifespan. Wouldn't it be nice if we could custom mix up a virus that they could breathe in that gave their epithelial cells the correct version of the gene? Be awesome, wouldn't it? Most people are okay with gene therapy because essentially at the end of the day, it's correcting a genetic mistake. Make sure you get that down. I've told you the story of Ashanti da Silva, right? And I've told you the story of Jesse Gelsinger. Those are kind of the bookends. Gene therapy is slowly but surely becoming more and more available for more and more conditions, but it is still a dangerous and highly, highly controlled area of study. Most people, though, as I said, don't really have a problem with gene therapy. Number 2 is where people get into trouble. And this, the best term is properly genetic enhancement. Genetic enhancement. This isn't where you correct an error. This is where you make a change for some trait you desire better. And I don't mean through breeding. I mean you go in and you actually change the person's DNA. This has been done already. A scientist in the People's Republic of China genetically altered 3 embryos to essentially knock out their CCR5 allele. Now, if you remember, I said CCR5 was that one where if you had both copies of it, in other words, you're homozygous for the mutated form, you're immune to AIDS. And that's why he did it, to make these particular individual children forever immune to HIV infection. The kids didn't get any say in it. They were just genetically enhanced. Why stop there? Christian, what do you see as the enhancement that could be given?
Leave me out of this.
Leave me out of this. What about you, Ethan? Carol? Everybody's afraid to say, and rightly so, because we may not agree. Is anybody here a basketball fan? You got a son, right? Would you like your son to go play for UK someday? It'd be cool. I don't have kids, and I hope I never have kids, but if I did have a son, I wouldn't mind if he went to the University of Tennessee to play football. I wouldn't mind free UT tickets. But if we each genetically engineered our respective sons to have traits that enhanced their ability to be an excellent basketball player or football player, most consider that to be unethical. And what if, despite my best efforts, my wayward son decides he loves horror of horrors, sports played with a round ball? And worse, he likes that nice shade of blue and decides he wants to be a cat and goes plays alongside your son. I've not done him any favors, have I? I may have actually inhibited his ability to play the sport he loves if I've turned him into a 6'6", 350-pound offensive lineman. You see where I'm going with this, don't you? Yes, it's a slippery slope, but it's one that once you start down it, it is very, very hard to stop it. Yes, ma'am.
So, I have endometriosis. Would there possibly be a way that, like, my kid, the DNA that I'm going to pass on to it, like,
Possibly. Mm-hmm. Assuming that they know two things. Number one, they have to assume it has a genetic cause. And number two, they have to identify that genetic cause. So let's assume that it was a very simple case, kind of like cystic fibrosis. They put in the correction. Your kids never have to suffer from it, ever. Is that gene therapy or is that gene enhancement?
I would say it's more therapeutic.
Well, you see, again, everybody hesitates. It is a very slippery slope. Let's say that by doing that, we made any possible sons that you have more susceptible to male pattern baldness. So your daughters would get a benefit, but I assure you, males would not. Is that really a disadvantage, though, or is that arbitrary? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Point I want you to get from this is when people talk about genetic enhancement, most people are against it, at least on the human level. It is a very, very tricky question. Consider that Chinese scientist. Did he really harm those embryos? Probably not. And as far as we know, there's no direct, immediate danger to them. Did he enhance them? Only if they are exposed to HIV. Some people see that as enhancement, some people see it as therapy, some people see it as irrelevant.
But you took away their choice.
They threw away their choice, bingo. But parents do that anyway, don't they? And I'm not saying it's wrong, because parent has to decide for the child. The child is not capable of making those decisions.
Somewhat, but when they become adults, they can also do a lot of things against their parents' choices.
Bingo.
So,
But the problem is, when it comes to things like this, it has to be done before birth. It has to be done generally before even conception. How many of you all have ever watched any of the Marvel movies and seen Captain America? Most everybody knows who he is, right? The super soldier. Well, why go through the problem of creating the super soldier serum when we can do one better and we can breed a better soldier from before they're even born? How many of you are okay with that? I thought for a minute you were going to put your hand up there. You were, I was like, you'll take the bait, right? Nobody would make them become a soldier when they were adults, right?
It'd be just basically a human weapon at that point, wouldn't it?
Well, who says they'll get the choice? Who goes to war? The young, healthy men or the rich, powerful old men? I'm not casting morality. I'm just making a statement. You see where I'm going with this? It's a very, very slippery slope. And once you go down it, where do you stop? Going back to me and you being UK and UT fans. I like that shade of orange. Y'all know what Tennessee's mascot is, don't you? Smokey the Hound Dog. Orange fur. Most people are probably not okay with that, am I right? How many of you would be okay with me giving Smokey the Coon Dog orange fur? And yet not a single one of you lifted your hand when I talked to you about glowfish. Kind of arbitrary, isn't it? I'm not saying right, I'm not saying wrong. I'm wanting you to understand the potential. And the third way for human eugenics, as much as I hate to say it, is the way they've tried in the past. Stop the undesirables from breeding. I'm not going to catch that one with a 10-foot pole. Boy, this must be actually interesting. Mia has actually started writing and put away her computer. You had a question, Lillian?
This is about the kids in China. Did they have like side effects? Like,
Not that we're aware of.
Oh, wait.
Hold on.
there was a program in China for many years, but they were not, they would abort female babies.
The one-child policy that they had in China for decades basically said any married couple could have one child only, and due to cultural biases, they much preferred to have sons rather than daughters, which resulted in a fairly large mismatch in the genetic ratio or the gender ratio, and they are one of the countries heading for a demographic cliff.
They actually are declining in population. They are lying about their population.
Oh, they're not lying about it, they're panicking. You ought to see them and Japan are both in trouble. Japan's age pyramid is upside down, literally. When you look at an age pyramid, you want it to look like this. You want a lot of younger people and fewer older people. Japan's looks like this. You can literally go to Japan and basically get a free house, but you have to live there and fix it up. But the problem is they have got probably the strictest immigration laws on the planet, and unless you are ethnically Japanese, you will not be going there to stay. You might go there for years, but you will forever be a gaijin or a foreigner. Don't look at me. I'm not the one making the rules. Yes, sir.
So since those kids are HIV, like they can't get it at all, can they pass it on to their next offspring?
Yeah. That's what genetic engineering means. Yes, ma'am.
Then what happens if, like, the girl that has no HIV, that gene, goes with a guy that has HIV, like, and their kid, like, what would that make their kid?
Well, most humans are homozygous norm, so they have a functional CCR5 allele. If she is homozygous for the delta 32 allele, then their children would be heterozygotes, right? So they'd be like me, resistant to HIV, but could ultimately get it. Yeah, I've got one copy of it.
Possible to damage DNA though in the process? Isn't it possible to damage DNA in the process of trying to alter the genes?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
That's why with Ashanti Da Silva, when they did it outside her body, and they screened and literally went through probably 2 or 3 million cells before they found the one that had the gene in the right place and in the right amount. The way they did it, there was no danger because they were doing it all outside her body. If you try to do it with a virus, you're basically saying we're going to infect every possible random cell we can with this and hope it sticks somewhere. Don't look at me like that. I'm not the one doing this. There's a reason I went into plants. Nobody cares if you stick a leaf into a blender. You do that with some warm fuzzy thing, people get looking at you strange.
You went the safe route, that's for sure.
Huh?
You went the safe route instead of doing the human stuff, that's for sure.
Well, I'm not going to lie, that's part of the reason why I did pick plants.
Because nobody's going to bat an eye or just say like, oh, you killed this plant. Okay. I don't care.
But how many of you would willingly eat a genetically modified organism? Raise your hands. Well, I hate to tell you, but pretty much every organism out there is genetically modified. Now, there's 2 types of this, one of which we've mentioned already, which is artificial selection. Pretty much every species we use is in no way, shape, form, or fashion a wild species anymore. You know, the turkeys that we buy can't mate on their own. Did you know that? They have so much breast tissue, they literally cannot physically come together to consummate the act of mating. They have to artificially inseminate them. Imagine having that on your resume as a job, turkey inseminator. I feel sorry for the person that has that. I'm serious. You don't believe me? Look them up. Look at the chickens that we have today and compare relative sizes to what they had in the 50s and 60s. They are huge. Y'all ever heard of an aurochs, A-U-R-O-C-H-S? An aurochs is the wild ancestral relative of the cow. They died out in the late 1600s. I believe it was 1680s. They lived in a forest in Poland, and a bunch of soldiers coming through with one of the armies shot and killed them all. They don't exist. Y'all have heard of bullfights, haven't you? You've seen the toreadors, the Spanish bullfights, the running of the bulls in Pamplona. Imagine that times 5 and you've got an idea of what an aurochs is like. Wild, vicious, would gut you with one swipe of those horns.
So that's why they eliminated them, because they were so
Uh-huh.
dangerous?
They eliminated the aggression. They eliminated the big horns. I think most people think of cows as fairly docile, dumb organisms. But again, an Angus versus a Guernsey or a Holstein, they're very different, aren't they? In form as well as function. In no way, shape, form, or fashion are any of those natural. So pretty much, if you are consuming something like that, it's a product of artificial selection. But most people are okay with that because it's natural. Y'all ever heard of BT corn? BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. It is a bacterium that produces a toxin. The toxin is harmless to humans. It is fatal to insects. So they took the gene for this toxin out of the bacterium, genetically inserted it into corn, so now they can grow these corn crops. They produce the toxin. Pests can't eat it. They die. If you're a farmer, that means more money in your pocket, right? If you're a consumer, you are eating bacterial toxins. Don't worry, you're probably far more likely to get some kind of parasite from eating sushi than to ever suffer from BT corn. But most people have a gut level, visceral fear of this type of thing. They call it Frankenfood. Frankenfood. After Frankenstein. I'd be willing to bet none of you have read that, have you? Another get off my lawn moment. How many are okay with BT corn? You probably eat it if you've eaten anything made of corn in the last 20 years. Yes, ma'am.
Is this all because of the sort of start of industrial farming that they
Yeah,
started doing that? 'Cause
yeah.
I think in a smaller crop it's easier to
Yeah, it's definitely got to
control
do.
your pests and all that.
It's definitely got to do with industrial farming, no question. But industrial farming is all about the profit.
I think there's a move to go back to smaller farms, but I'm not sure.
There are some people that you've heard of organic farming and this and that. There are different levels of danger associated with that as well. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. Again, I'm just trying to educate you all.
They just both have their ups and downs to them. It's
But very few people truly understand what it means.
I don't know if it's possible to get non-genetically altered corn. Is it possible to even get that non-genetically altered?
I can't hear you.
Sorry, I don't even know if it's possible to get not genetically altered corn.
You could buy it at like a farmer's market or something like that. I'm not entirely sure how much you would trust the particular individual, but they can label a lot of things organic. But if you were buying something that you get at Kroger's or any other, Walmart, it's probably GMO.
No, I meant if you were to like try to farm it to get the seed, I think it's near impossible to get that.
There are lots of heirloom seed banks. It's a lot easier than you think. It's not necessarily something that would give you a high yield or a competitive yield against an industrial farm. It would only be a niche product for people who wanted to buy corn that was guaranteed organic or something like that. That's why if you go shopping somewhere like Whole Foods, it's always more expensive. Again, not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong, just stating a fact. But there's all kinds of heirloom seed banks. It's a fairly niche market, but it's a fairly big one too. Y'all ever heard of jewel corn? Google it, Jewel. Just look at it right now if you want. It's pretty cool. It's completely natural, completely organic, and it's beautiful. Pastels. The problem is this: most people don't understand what it means when we say genetically modified. There isn't a lot of government oversight on it, and there aren't a lot of ways for you as a consumer to tell what is and isn't. And even if it is labeled, how far is it? Is it straight up genetic engineering, or is it something that's artificially selected, or is it some mix and match? It's pretty cool stuff, isn't it?
Isn't there also organic corn that's also genetically modified?
I don't know because I don't keep up on food labels.
I think you can grow it organically.
It wouldn't surprise me. Organic essentially means no additives. And that essentially means, from what I understand, chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides. But y'all know what was used for fertilizer before we came up with industrial commercial fertilizer, don't you? Poop. And if it's night soil, which used to be the technical term, it was human poop. So all of the parasites that people poop out are getting spread on the cornfields. Once we got a little bit more civilized, we moved away from that and started using bird poop. You ever heard of guano? You ever wonder how the United States ended up with so many islands in the Pacific? Because of the Guano Island Act. Congress passed an act that allowed people to go out and claim unclaimed islands so they could mine the bird poop off of it for fertilizer. And before you look at me like I am insane, I assure you this is historical fact. People say history's boring. I think it's way more cool than what we have going on today.
I like it.
We had a lot of weirdos.
We got-
People are weird.
We got some crazy stuff in our history too.
Yeah, but for the first time with the agricultural revolution, essentially for the first time in human history, we had an excess of calories. And that is what has given us what we have today.
I'm not gonna lie.
True or false? You, and I'm looking at you, live a life of total absolute luxury compared to a medieval king.
True.
True. You have temperature control on demand. You have pretty much any food you want on demand. You have a minimum of effort preparing any food you want on demand. Now, it may cost you, but you probably have more disposable income than the king had. Yeah, he may have been rich, but there's not a lot of people lining up to actually buy stuff and give him gold for it, was there? All that because of industrial farming. Again, I'm not going to say it's good. I'm not going to say it's bad. It's just a thing.
We probably have an easier time than people in the past for sure, if they see it.
But we always want more.
Yeah.
Human nature is human nature. Right, Macy? So, any questions at all about eugenics? None? I put 2 or 3 of you to sleep. I've got 2 or 3 of you thinking I'm some kind of closet Nazi. All I want you to take home from this whole exercise is this. Genetic engineering is here to stay. It is being done. It will continue to be done. It will have some impact on your lives. Major, minor, good, bad, I'm not sure. But I want to make sure that you're aware that technology exists and that it is out there, and there is a high possibility of it being misused. One last little tidbit. Has anybody ever heard the term pre-existing condition as relates to health insurance? I see a couple of us nodding, especially some of us older people. All you young whippersnappers in excellent health, you don't have to worry about it. But essentially it means this. If you already have some kind of medical condition and you apply for insurance, you are automatically going to be a more expensive patient than most people. That's what a pre-existing condition means. It means that you may be denied coverage, or if you get coverage, it's more limited, and or you have to pay more. My ex-spouse having lupus, I think I told you about that. I'm not going to lie, when she went off my insurance, it helped my pocket. I was not surprised. I was frankly shocked by how much more spending money I had that she was no longer around. Not only because I wasn't paying her insurance, but because I didn't have to buy all the gluten-free food. My grocery bill got cut by 75%. Yeah, it would have been cheaper for me to eat out at fast food every meal of every day than it would be for both of us on the gluten-free stuff. Pretty wild, isn't it? Well, here's the kicker. Let's say you have a genetic marker for cystic fibrosis, and the insurance company gets hold of your DNA.
Because of that, or?
That was a concern, but in 2007, Congress actually did something right for a change, and they passed a law called GINA, G-I-N-A, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. GINA says you cannot be denied coverage or overcharged coverage because of a genetic condition. And that's it for eugenics. I believe we were going to have a review. Is that correct? So that is the end of the material for the exam. As a reminder, the exam will be 1 week from today. Everybody got that? 1 week from today. We will have a lecture on Thursday, but that material will not be on the exam. So, what will be on the exam? Population genetics. Hardy-Weinberg. For that, make sure that you know the 5 assumptions and the 5 evolutionary forces. Know the difference between natural selection, artificial selection, and sexual selection.
What was the first one?
Artificial, natural, and sexual. Sounds like a winner in a TV movie. Know the 2 types of immigration and the correspondence in gene flow. Know what genetic swamping is. Genetic swamping. Know what genetic drift is. Know that it is random. And know that it is most pronounced in small populations. The two types of genetic drift that we discussed were founder effect and a population bottleneck. Know the difference, be able to give examples. Example of a founder effect would be Ireland. We talked about the redheads, didn't we? A genetic bottleneck would be cheetahs. Know what speciation is, the formation of a new species. Know that speciation requires reproductive isolation. Reproductive isolation. Make sure you're aware of the different types of reproductive isolation. Geographic, temporal, behavioral, mechanical, genetic, know the different definitions of the term species. We had a biological species, a morphological species, and geographic species, or geographical species.
What was the first one?
Biological.
And apparently I left the recorder on, so all of this will be on it as well. Know what taxonomy is. Just classification. What is the goal of classification? It's to group things that are related so we can study them. To group things that are related so that we can study them. Know the different levels of classification. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species.
Those were the different classifications.
Yeah. Know the two domains. And by that I mean prokarya and eukarya. Know the 6 kingdoms. Within prokarya, you have archaea and bacteria. Within eukarya, you have protista, animalia, plantae, and fungi. And if you put plants and animals, that's fine. This isn't Latin class.
Procreate has what?
Bacteria and archaea. You should know this.
It's just
Know what genetic engineering is. Know what gene therapy is. Know the difference. Know what eugenics is. Know the two types. What do y'all got, about a page? Know the definition of evolution, a change in allele frequencies in a population over time. Know the definition of the term allele. Allele pool or gene pool? I'll take either one. It should properly be gene pool, but if you call it an allele pool, it should properly be allele pool, but if you call it gene pool, I'm okay with that. Know about extinction. What is extinction? It's the loss of a species. What is a mass extinction event? The loss of many to most species. How many have there been throughout history?
5, but there might be a 6.
5, but there might be a 6th. Who's responsible for number 6?
Humans.
Humans. Know what typically causes extinctions. Habitat fragmentation versus habitat destruction. What is conservation biology? What's more important to conservation, genetics or numbers?
Numbers.
Nope, genetics. You want diversity. I'd rather have 10 highly diverse individuals than 100 that are closely related. Extirpation versus extinction. Extirpation. Did we talk about that?
I don't think we did.
Extirpation just means a local elimination of a species, but not a total elimination. A local, but not a total.
Can you spell that again?
Extirpation. For example, mountain lions used to be native to this area. They have been extirpated in the eastern United States. Does that mean they are extinct? No. There's still some in Florida. There's still a lot out west. How much is that? About a page and a half?
About 3 or 2.
Got 3 pages.
Y'all think that's enough? I think that's a nice round figure. I can get enough questions from it. So let's call it there. That sound okay to everyone? We're getting out about 2 or 3 minutes early.